Okay, welcome back to our second part of the JonBenét Ramsey case. If you're with us for our last episode, we discussed the origins of the crime and the crime scene and 2 theories of who it might have been that committed such a heinous act. And today we'll be delving into at least 3 more theories to figure out who is responsible for one of the most notorious cold cases in Colorado. So without further ado, we'll jump right back into it.
Theory number 3. The only suspect named by the Ramseys in their book, Chris Wolf.
That's a sick name,
all right? That's the next Jack Ryan or Ethan Hunt or whatever.
100%.
Chris Wolf is dope.
He was brought to the investigators' attention when his girlfriend, Jackie Dilson, reached out and told them that Chris had disappeared the night JonBenet was murdered, December 25th at 10 p.m., only to return hours later at 5:30 a.m. the next day on December 26th without any explanation. He was covered in dirt and debris and immediately took a shower, refusing to explain where he had been. Not to mention, they only lived a couple miles away from the Ramseys. Chris Wolf matched the description of the man seen by the Barnhills the night of the murder: tall, thin, and blonde. When the police questioned him on his whereabouts that night, he claimed he was bar hopping, which the police found suspicious given that most bars in town were closed due to Christmas. His girlfriend also mentioned he didn't smell of alcohol when he returned. Chris was also a journalist who had written about Access Graphics, John Ramsey's company, and was said to have resented John and the company, believing they embodied corporate greed, meaning he would have a motive to attack the Ramseys and could possibly have known about the $118,000 Christmas bonus. As for his handwriting, a forensic examiner, Lloyd Cunningham, couldn't eliminate him as the author of the note. Speaking of the ransom note, Chris Wolf owned a shirt that read Santa Barbara Tennis Club, and when abbreviated, are the exact letters initialed at the end of the ransom note, SBTC.
Wild.
Coincidence?
That's a foreign faction right there. Santa Barbara, California.
Let's say he's writing the ransom note and he's like, who can I pin this on? Like, what foreign faction? And he just looks down at his shirt. SBTC. You're like, really, bro?
Yeah, not very subtle.
But it's like, at the same time, what are the odds? Sure, that might be stupid to do, but it adds up.
But I mean, it's a very odd set of letters. SBTC. And I've been sitting here, like, as we've been doing this, kind of
trying to
think
what it could
of,
be.
What could that be? I really have nothing.
I couldn't come up with anything either, because I'm like, 4 letters? That's a long abbreviation. Like, what the heck would that entire thing be? There were a couple theories where it was something to do with Christ, like Sunday baptism through Christ or something, or the cross representing Christ. But it's like, I really doubt a religious guy is gonna murder a child and then, shout out God at the end or whatever.
I don't know. There's some pretty crazy.
Okay, yeah, there are some wackos out there, but
you seen Angels and Demons?
Yes. Okay, you're right. I stand corrected. I stand corrected.
Granted, that's a movie, but I'm sure those people exist.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
With this information, the cops would hook him up to a polygraph, and when he's asked about specific involvement in JonBenet's death, it showed signs of deception. But could this all just be a coincidence? The forensic examiner, who thought he could be the author of the ransom note, was personally hired by the Ramseys, which brings bias into the equation, as the Colorado Bureau of Investigation's forensics team did not believe him to be the author. The investigators could never confirm or deny his alibi, but most importantly, his DNA did not match any found on JonBenet nor the crime scene. Chris ended up suing the Ramseys. During the trial, he was administered another polygraph privately, which he passed. It's unlikely he would bring more attention to himself by suing the family if he had in fact killed JonBenet.
Unless that's what an innocent person would do.
Dude, we're doing some like reverse psychology crap right now.
I mean, it's a very ballsy thing to do.
It is ballsy.
But in his mind, if he's like, this is what an innocent person would do.
Yes, but at the same time, super risky because you're suing risky. Them and it's like, all right, let's reevaluate all the evidence with a prosecutor that is going to do everything in his power to spin the narrative to point to you. Like, that is crazy to put yourself in that situation instead of just being like, oh, it wasn't me, cop said so. But the verdict of the suing, he lost. So the reason was because the judge believed there was enough unanswered questions and probable cause for him to be labeled as a suspect. What about him being gone in the exact timeline of when she was killed?
I do think that's crazy, but they said that, remind me of the time frame, that she'd been killed between 5 and 7 a.m. and he returned at 5:30?
She had been killed anywhere from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And the fact where it's like, okay, I'm bar hopping, the police could never confirm or deny what he was actually doing. So that still leaves him up in the air of, okay, so what were you doing? Like, if you were bar hopping, surely there could have been bartenders who were like, yeah, the only dude on Christmas who came to get a drink was this guy. I assume it was thorough, but they can never not say he didn't. So
yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that, and maybe you have a different perspective on this, but he's covered in dirt and debris. Like, why? I mean, it doesn't add up to drinking, but it also seems weird to be covered in dirt and debris if he killed JonBenet. Mm-hmm. Very difficult for me to say her name because I keep on wanting to say JonBenet from The Office.
JonBenet, yeah.
Well, just because so much of the crime scene was like clean, methodical. They couldn't really match any DNA or anything like that. I mean, there were footprints here and there, but to be covered in dirt and debris coming home from this crime scene while leaving a crime scene incredibly clean.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Also doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I also don't know why you'd leave at 10 p.m. or whatever she said, and then come back at 5:30, refusing to give an explanation. Either you killed her, you killed somebody else. I mean, it's not really
they were just looking at the wrong crime because he definitely committed something. I guess I didn't think about the dirtiness because I was just thinking, oh, he ran home, but we're not in the freaking Amazon. Like he's probably running on the road or something, not trudging through Vietnam trying to get back to his house.
I mean, it's weird that he wouldn't give an explanation. You showed up covered in stuff. You would assume that you'd, say something like, I helped change someone's tire in this crazy rainstorm that happened
just in this one secluded street.
Yeah, seriously.
But I think it also warrants a further look that his girlfriend was calling him out to the police. She obviously thought he was capable or suspected him. Why? He probably exhibited weird behavior in their relationship. It should definitely be looked at that he was thrown under the bus by his girlfriend for probably a valid reason. And also him having beef with the Ramseys just because they were richer than him is what it really sounds like.
They embodied corporate greed.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not like a good chunk of this country, but I feel like you could say that about
I was going to say, he must have beef with a ton of people.
I mean, that's a lot of people.
I think he's stronger than the last dude just because there is, in the almost exact time of when JonBenet could have been killed, no one can account where he was. And they lived pretty close and he had beef with the Ramseys.
If the thing about the shrine is true with the last guy,
yeah,
I might still be leaning towards him over Chris, but it's a very tight race.
Yeah.
Theory number 4. A violent schizophrenic named Gary Oliva killed JonBenet. The day JonBenet's body was found, he called a friend, Michael Vale, telling him, quote, "I just hurt a little girl," end quote. Police reports show that no other girl was harmed that night, eliminating the possibility he was referring to someone else. He wrote more letters to Michael, each more disturbing than the phone call. Some of the letters stated, quote, "I never thought I would fall in love with a little girl. Yet, I let her slip and her head smashed in half and I watched her die. It was an accident. Please believe me," end quote.
No shade on mental health, but can we all admit that that's a little insane?
Can you imagine just reading the first line, you're like, "I beg your pardon."
The most disturbing part is that this wouldn't be the first time. He had been arrested in Oregon years prior for strangling his mother with a cord and molesting a child. During the time of JonBenet's death, Gary was homeless and was allegedly at a Christmas dinner for the homeless that was located a couple blocks away from the Ramseys. Not only that, he actually showed up to the candlelight vigil held for JonBenet. He was later arrested in 2000 for having explicit pictures of minors. When arrested, police found hundreds of photos of JonBenet and a poem he wrote for her. Experts also found many similarities with his handwriting and the ransom note.
Let's release theory number 2. Let's release that guy, and let's put this dude in his place.
Throw this fool in, yeah.
That's way worse than the shrine, objectively speaking. I mean...
Yeah, I think
a history of violence, molestation,
and having like a ton of photos of the victim.
Yeah, that's insane.
That is crazy. Yeah, he's schizophrenic, so it's like he's not going to be in the right headspace no matter what. Not excusing any of this behavior.
Very glad you cleared that.
Let the record show. But it's like a schizoid staying in the house for 2 hours, talking to his alleged buddy that's all in his head, his accomplice. Maybe.
Could be,
yeah. I mean, it's so stupid that it makes sense a schizophrenic would stay in the house that long.
Didn't I make a joke about that earlier? That the guy committing the crime, I said he could have been schizophrenic because some of it was so logical and some of it was so stupid. Don't call me a prophet.
However, he was labeled as a serial confessor by psychologists, and he couldn't provide any information about the case that wasn't already public. Along with all the others, none of the DNA found at the crime scene belonged to him. With faulty confessions of a severely mentally unstable man and no physical evidence, they never could link the crime to Gary.
Okay.
You're not convinced?
No! I thought the setback's going to be a little more severe than that. Granted, serial confessor, sure. But, he touched some kids, strangled his mom, and had a couple hundred pictures of this girl. Went to her candlelight vigil, is not mentally well. I mean, the list goes on.
It all adds up. It's the perfect suspect.
Those setbacks are pretty weak, in my opinion. No DNA. That's kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
Serial confessor is moderate.
But we also have to think, I am sure there's evidence they have never released, police. Yeah, and I'm sure there's evidence they were comparing him to that we don't know of. And it was like, yeah, he couldn't have done this or whatever. Well, that's he didn't know anything that everybody else didn't already know. It's like, okay, you did? Tell me. What color was the carpet she was found on, or whatever it may be.
If someone who is not mentally well does a bunch of crazy stuff and maybe can't confirm details of the crime.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not saying we should just throw this dude in jail based on what we publicly know. Okay, let me run that back.
The producers ain't gonna like that.
But that's just my take, and the producers can have my head for it.
We got a thumbs up. We're okay.
All right,
cool.
Theory number 5. The only suspect ever formally arrested, John Mark Carr. Carr was a former school teacher who had lived in the same Alabama town that the Ramseys lived in prior to Colorado. However, everything would change for the murder case in 2006. Michael Tracy, an investigative journalist, emailed Carr for 4 years to build trust between the two. The emails Carr sent resembled the style and language used in the ransom note, even noting off using SBTC at times. After a while, the emails began to ramp up, talking about how much he loved JonBenet. Until 2006, when he heard of Patsy Ramsey's cancer diagnosis, he finally confessed to killing JonBenet, stating, quote, "I was with JonBenet when she died. Her death was an accidental death. I loved JonBenet. I shall never be able to forgive myself for what happened to her. Everything began as a game. It was a beautiful game that went wrong." End quote. Michael Tracy turned all his emails into the police after that.
The absolute grit and mental
tenacity.
Yes. Not just a journalist, anyone would need to email a weirdo for 4 years who probably had to act like he was into it or whatever. Shout, because that's crazy.
I love my tax guy. I have trouble enough responding to his emails. I can't imagine emailing a suspect. That's a kind word to use.
Yeah.
Emailing a potential suspect and building a relationship for 4 years.
Mm-hmm. He was quoted saying it was like, I saw a side of human nature that I never want to see ever again.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Bless that dude's heart for enduring that.
My goodness.
But it led to an arrest, so let's see where this goes.
In 2008, a special operation involving multiple countries and organizations would take place, arresting and extraditing Carr from Thailand. The investigation would discover some disturbing things. Carr was obsessed with child killers. He had escaped to Thailand to avoid explicit child material charges in California, and his handwriting was very similar to the author of the ransom note. However, through some interrogation and investigations, it was determined by experts he had merely adopted the persona of the killer, studying the ransom note's language and changing his handwriting to match the killer's, memorizing everything known publicly about the case. and falsely claiming to have been with her during her death. The handwriting sample was too calculated and labeled as a simulated match.
What's this face I'm getting?
He changed his handwriting. I'm trying to change my handwriting for like 10 years. My handwriting still sucks. I just barely figured out how to make my A's not look like 9s. I'm 23 years old.
Changing the handwriting does seem like that'd be hard. But if you are obsessed with this, not only case, but the idea of having been the person who did it, fair. And you're a sicko, you memorize everything, you're analyzed by a bunch of psychologists, and they're like, you're just adopting the persona of who actually did it. Like, why are you portraying the actual killer or whatever? Because it seems a little too on the nose. I'm going to sign off SBTC. What they should have asked him is like, what the frick does that mean? And how coherent of a response they would have gotten, right?
Hey,
but
that's good.
None of the information he had about the case was new, and he claimed she had been drugged when that was not the case. Most importantly, his DNA didn't match the DNA at the crime scene, and even more so, it was determined he wasn't even in Colorado during the time of the murders.
One interesting thing I will point out with this guy.
Sure.
In his years of emails that he sent, there are multiple reports and they conflict. One side of them says he referred to Patsy Ramsey as Nettie, which one side claims is a nickname to Patsy that she used. No explanation of how he would have known that was her nickname.
There's nothing in like newspapers, anything that's publicly known.
Not
even an obituary.
Not to these people's knowledge. But there's another side saying she never went by Nettie. So it depends who you believe. Because I was reading conflicting things. Like, it was like, he referred to her as Nettie in the emails. And the Ramseys wonder how he knew that because that was like never public or whatever. And then there are other reports saying Patsy never even went by the name Nettie and it meant nothing to her. So I was like,
it deserves an honorable mention.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I really thought that was going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It really did.
It kind of really goes down and was like, he just wasn't even in the state.
It was like the whole buildup of the last one and then had no
payoff.
No payoff.
Theory number 6. The Ramseys are responsible for the death of JonBenet. It is important to state from the beginning that the Ramsey family is legally presumed innocent and no one has ever been convicted in connection with JonBenet Ramsey's murder. The information discussed here comes from publicly available reports, interviews, investigative accounts, and documented case materials. Rather than accusing any individual of involvement, this analysis examines inconsistencies, disputed timelines, and investigative theories that have been publicly debated for decades. Based on the interpretation presented by some investigators and commentators, the evidence is often argued as pointing either towards a collective effort within the family or away from the family entirely, rather than isolating a single member acting alone. As with all aspects of this case, many conclusions remain heavily contested and ultimately unproven. We will be examining a theory that tries to fit as many pieces together as possible, but try as we might, there are too many inconsistencies for this to be a set theory. Let's go back to the very beginning of the timeline given by the Ramseys. After coming home from the party, JonBenet had fallen asleep in the car, so they brought her in and immediately put her to bed. However, we know this isn't true, due to the pineapple being found in JonBenet's stomach, which means she was awake 2 hours prior to her death. When confronted with this information, Patsy denied any knowledge of pineapple being made into a snack, which is particularly odd given that her fingerprints and Burke's were found on the bowl and spoon containing the pineapple. Why lie about that? Detective Lou Smith, who spent his whole career perpetuating that an intruder did it, had to admit that the pineapple is something he could never explain and said it was a, quote, big bugaboo, end quote. They also lied about Burke being asleep as well. Enhanced audio of the 911 call by Patsy Ramsey highlights what sounds like a young boy's voice being heard in the background saying, quote, what did you find, end quote. While other theorists claim it is not a clear enough audio to determine what is being said or by who. Patsy would also claim to the dispatcher that she only read the first couple lines of the ransom note, and yet she knew it was signed SBTC. The other aspect of the call is the fact that Patsy Ramsey hung up on the operator, which is odd if they are your only chance of helping you until help arrives. Police immediately noted suspicion with Patsy when they arrived, as she was all dressed and ready with the clothes she wore the night prior, as if she never went to bed in the first place. More incriminating, fibers from her sweater she was wearing were found in the most suspicious spots of the crime scene, on the duct tape placed over JonBenet's mouth, on the choking device, and the paint tray where the broken paintbrush had been taken. The Ramsey's defense team would state that it's a byproduct of Patsy living in that house. Of course, her fibers would be everywhere. She frequented the painting supplies and wore that jacket more than once in the house. Not to mention the contamination of the crime scene and the body when John and Patsy were all over JonBenét's body. As for the broken window in the basement, John claimed he broke it when he forgot a house key and couldn't get back in. But we already know that there was a spare key hidden in the lawn. So why would John need to break a window? John Ramsey claimed the window had been broken a year prior, but there was no weathering or debris or any signs of mold or humidity from the cold winters indicating that that was the case. Detective Arndt, the main detective who was at the house most of the time with the Ramseys on December 26th, made some abnormal observations about the Ramseys from the time they called to when the body was found. She noted how John and Patsy were unusually separated and not consolidating each other. There was a 60 to 90 minute time period where Detective Arndt couldn't locate John Ramsey, which John claimed he was in his study room, reading the note and trying to stay out of the police's way as to not interfere with their investigation.
It seems kind of weird to me that they just let him take a piece of police evidence to go read.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
No.
What the heck?
It just seems weird to be like, well, I'm going to go take this, sit in my office, you do your thing, and
I'll holla at you in 90 minutes.
yeah, seriously. I don't know. It just seems weird to me, but if the police didn't say anything different, like, well, we had the ransom note, then maybe that really is what happened. The clothes that Patsy was wearing. I mean, in her defense, usually when I'm going to bed, the clothes that I'm wearing that night usually get put away in the next 1 to 3 business days. That's not that crazy of me to imagine. She wakes up, some crazy stuff happens, and then she puts on some clothes. Clothes that are easily accessible. I would assume that most adults wouldn't want to be talking to the police in their nightwear.
But at the same time, how concerned are you about your image when your daughter just got kidnapped?
Yeah, no. I mean 100%.
The only reason for me it makes sense for her to even be in clothes, they got a flight in the morning. She wakes up, gets ready 2 hours in advance for the flight, walks down, then finds the note. Okay, it's still suspicious to be in the same clothes and allegedly like same makeup and stuff, because it's like, you're gonna fly, or you're gonna wear the same thing. You seem to be affluent and posh enough to have multiple outfits of not wanting to be seen wearing the same outfit twice or whatever. What about the fibers of the sweater?
You know, the specific sweater stuff, super weird. Because you said they were found on the
choking device, the paintbrush on the choking device,
right,
the duct tape on JonBenét's mouth.
Okay, the duct tapes and the choking device, both are pretty tough to work your way around. And that, like thinking through that same logic of like, or the clothing that's easily accessible.
Yeah.
Very difficult to talk yourself out of that one using the same logic.
The biggest red flag she noticed was the Ramseys' apparent lack of urgency or reaction after the deadline in the ransom note came and went without any phone call from the supposed kidnapper. They made no mention or acknowledgement to the police about why the kidnapper had not called. Police find this very strange due to the fact in most kidnappings, most parents are glued to the phone, waiting for anything from the kidnappers. It's as if they knew no call was coming.
Is there any reason you could think of why they would have acted that way?
No.
Yeah, I can't think of one.
I mean, there's very few things that I'm going to say without thinking about. That's one of those that I can
pretty tough.
Definitively say.
In the Ramseys' book, Patsy claims it was because she was in a, quote, fog that whole morning and couldn't process anything and was surrounded by a constant swarm of people coming and going. While John tried distracting himself, believing it was his job to, quote, wait and leave the call to the police.
But not a single question?
Yeah, I don't love that.
That seems like a very calculated response. I don't care how much faith you have in whoever. That deadline comes around and nothing, or you haven't heard anything from police saying they called, you're going to ask.
I'd imagine that I'd be glued to the detective's hip. I feel like I would refuse to leave for any reason.
You would borderline
whatsoever.
get arrested.
No, I feel like I really would.
And then going to what Patsy said, it's like, yeah, I was in a fog. I had a bunch of people coming and going and consolidating me. It's like, yes, but don't you think they'd be asking, like, what's happening? She was kidnapped. Are there any clues? And like the questions that people would be asking to Patsy, she would be reminded, oh yeah, there's a call coming at 10 for what we're supposed to do to get JonBenet back.
If anything, that should shake you out of your fog.
Well, yeah, and then people asking you that and no one going, it's 10:30. Did they call yet? Or like nothing like that. I just feel like naturally in her situation, it would have come up. So at that point, you'd have to like deliberately ignore it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not the biggest fan of that explanation in any way, shape, or form.
Detective Arndt also found it suspicious when she told John and Fleet to search the house, quote, top to bottom, and John went directly downstairs and 5 minutes later found JonBenet. Police reports show that John Ramsey made flight plans to Atlanta 35 minutes after JonBenet was found. At first, he claimed it was a work thing he couldn't get out of, but then he switched his story of needing a place for him and his family to stay while their house was a crime scene. It seems to be painting a picture of John and Patsy wanting to escape the heat of the case and leave town. Not only that, the Ramseys immediately lawyered up mere hours after the body was found, buying the best legal team for his immediate and extended family.
With lawyering up, because it's like in all the true crime things I listen to, it's like, you idiot, get a lawyer. You always hear, even if you're innocent, get a lawyer. But then when someone lawyers up, it's always like, well, that's sus, bro. And it's like,
right.
It's a lose-lose. It's like, I lawyer up and I'm protected, and people are going to think, oh, you have something to hide. Or I don't lawyer up and I get pinned for a crime I didn't do because I get manipulated or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in certain situations, I feel like that logic would apply. Like, for example, if you're like defending your home against an invader and some act of violence happens, I feel like in this situation, a lawyer doesn't seem as necessary. If someone kidnapped your daughter and left a ransom note, why would you need a lawyer at that point?
Well, it was right after she was found.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand like maybe not wanting to be interviewed by police until you consult with a lawyer, but just the fact that like borderline immediately you go get a lawyer, that just seems kind of odd to me, especially because you didn't commit any crime at all.
Yeah.
You did absolutely nothing, and anything that you accidentally did, like contaminating the crime scene, one, the cops already fumbled, and two, it would be acceptable because that's just you being you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't need a lawyer to defend that in this case.
The only weird thing, you just discovered your daughter and like your immediate thought is self-preservation. I need to lawyer up. I need to be protected. Why is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Like give it a couple days and then lawyer up. Lawyering up, smart thing to do, still makes you look suspicious, unfortunately. But right after, that is your go-to. Why are you so concerned with self-preservation and not, oh my gosh, who did this to my daughter?
And what's with the flight to Atlanta? Weren't they planning on going on a vacation that day anyway? So if he couldn't get out of a work thing, why did that all of a sudden become an excuse for that flight?
This is why you're on the show. That detective brain of yours sometimes.
I might suck at words, but boy, can I look at this
you
like
have
it's
your
a crime
moments.
show.
You have your moments, bro. The crazy thing is, it wasn't just his immediate family, but his extended family. So like his mom is getting a lawyer. Why? It's like you see a robbery on TV and then you call the police and you go, just so you know, my mom had nothing to do with that robbery. And then you hang up. It's like, what? Like, why would you bring that up?
You mentioned at the very beginning potential evidence of chronic abuse. Am I remembering those two words correctly?
Yep.
Could that potentially be an explanation for the lawyer if the family was at least aware of the abuse? And now that the daughter ends up dead. I understand, obviously, lawyering up for yourself, but the extended family seems, one, expensive, you're also rich, two, unnecessary. But if there was abuse, then maybe that would be helpful in that scenario.
That doesn't sound like an innocent mind, bro. I'm gonna be real with you. That conscience.
The Ramseys were less than cooperative with the police, refusing to be interviewed unless it was on their terms, one of those being they could not be interrogated separately. However, the Ramseys would do 2 media interviews, one being on CNN, while still refusing to talk to the police. Finally, 4 months after their daughter's murder, did they agree to be interviewed by the police.
So the only interviews that they acquiesced were to 2 scripted media interviews.
Not by the police, where they could say whatever they wanted. Just put yourself in their shoes. You are innocent. Your daughter's dead. You're going to want to help the police figure out who did that. Are you waiting 4 months to even start helping the police, assisting them in the investigation?
Why would you refuse to not be interrogated separately in conjunction with that?
Unless you're trying to keep your story straight between 2 parties.
I mean, like all these elements that you just mentioned along with that together, That just makes no sense to me. If these same circumstances were applied to a different scenario, your average person would likely be saying, there's a good chance they're guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, the lawyer could have been like, don't be interviewed separately. This was your story. Any little leeway if you guys were separated that didn't add up, they would exploit, turn it on you to make it look like you committed the crime. So just, we're not even going to bother with that. It's like, yeah, totally plausible.
But not after 4 months.
Yeah.
They both would be questioned by the police for 6.5 hours. In the interrogation, John claimed he went to the basement after the discovery of the ransom note to look for any entry points. When the investigators pushed him on why he didn't check the room JonBenet was found in at the time, given that it was so close to the broken window, he couldn't come up with a satisfactory explanation for the police, given that it was one of the only rooms he searched when he found her body. However, the most revealing thing about this interrogation wasn't what was said, rather, what wasn't. The Ramseys never asked any follow-up on other suspects, the ransom note, or more details about their daughter's death, which is very strange given that standard behavior for their situation usually shows parents with an obsession of getting to the bottom of what happened to their child. They also refused any polygraph testing unless it was done independently by people the Ramseys hired.
So you get a ransom note. You find your dead daughter. Never do you bother to follow up.
Yeah, why?
You don't ask about progress on the case.
Who cares?
Isn't it a stereotype that everyone calls the police every 20 minutes asking for any updates?
Maybe you, bro.
The polygraph testing? Unless it was by someone you hired?
I know, and it's like, the police probably immediately heard that and were like, are you for real? Like, you think we're stupid?
However, the biggest revelation about this theory would take place in 1998, when a grand jury voted to indict the Ramseys on one count of, quote, child abuse resulting in death, end quote, and a second count of, quote, accessory to a crime, end quote. However, District Attorney Alex Hunter refused to sign off on it, stating it lacked substantial evidence for it to be held up in court. It's worth noting that one of the Ramseys' lawyers was a business partner with the district attorney, which the police claimed that relationship made Alex Hunter biased towards the Ramseys. Conversely, reports show that 5 independent prosecutors also advised Alex Hunter that the indictment from the grand jury wouldn't stand a chance in court.
It's worth noting that the charges brought up on the Ramseys, their indictment charges, are very vague. It's not saying the Ramseys killed her, rather, the Ramseys let the forces that happened to JonBenet happen when they could have stopped it. They put her in that scenario. They introduced things that made it so the end result was JonBenet dead. Not that they did it, but they enabled it.
So they didn't pull the trigger, but they left the gun loaded on the table.
Yes, exactly.
I don't think there's a ton there, personally. Yeah, it is sketchy that Alex was like, I'm not signing on this. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if 5 independent legal officers of legal counsel of some sort, whether they're lawyers or paralegals or whatever, 5 said there's no way this flies.
It's just interesting, the dichotomy of the prosecutor's brain and a jury's brain, where it's like civilians thought there is enough to say the Ramseys were somewhat involved, we believe, given all this evidence. But on the flip side, if a prosecutor thinks it's weak, he probably knows, I know how to get them out of this and completely change the jury's mind. To me, it seems more suspicious of a group of their peers thought, yeah, there is something going on here. And higher ups were like, no, there's not. And the Ramseys happen to be higher ups.
It's like there's always just enough there to cast considerable doubt.
The ransom note is the most important piece of the puzzle to be solved, given that the ransom note is the only indicator of a break-in. Without it, the intruder theory seems highly implausible. That being said, let's see how it holds up against the Ramseys.
And I want you to remember everything we already discussed about the irregularities and stuff and signs of deception. See how maybe that would fit into what we're about to talk about.
One of the most important aspects of the note is the fact that it was written with pen and paper that belonged to the Ramseys. Earlier, I stated that the ransom note couldn't be attributed to any of the Ramseys, but at the same time, Patsy couldn't be ruled out as the author of the note because her handwriting samples came back inconclusive. However, some experts were more confident. Linguist expert Donald Foster believes it is likely that Patsy wrote the ransom note. It was also discovered that her handwriting had striking similarities to that of the ransom note, such as word spacing, letter formations, and specific letter connections. The wording and structure of the ransom note, which we discussed earlier, suggests an attempt to construct a bizarre and misleading scenario designed to divert suspicion. Yet parts of the note appear inconsistent, almost as if the writer had to rethink or revise certain details while trying to maintain the illusion of a legitimate kidnapping. Why would an authentic ransom note need to do that? All the mistakes and suspicions of the ransom note would make sense if it was Patsy trying to stage a kidnapping.
That being said, let's go back to the irregularities and let's think of Patsy writing the note and see what makes sense and what doesn't.
Sure.
The $118,000 demand. She would 100% know that amount of money. It wouldn't be a coincidence that it's the same bonus that John Ramsey got.
At the same time, though, why would you put $118,000?
It points to her the fact the number, she would have known the number. At the same time,
yeah. No, 100%.
Why choose that number? Why not just do $100,000?
To me, it makes more sense to go to 100, 125, 150. I mean, some multiple of 25.
Yeah. And then the author seems to have made a mistake on their feelings towards John Ramsey, adding the not when they were talking about the two men watching over your daughter do not particularly like you. It would make sense if you're fabricating an entire scenario in your head to get that wrong.
Kind of coming back to the beginning of the ransom note where they talk about support the company but not the country. Throwing that line in there with Patsy in mind. If I were Patsy and I put that line in there as like an independent third party, I would think that if she did write that, I would just be an attempt at misleading. Because nowhere else in the ransom note do they talk about anything else about America
That has
as a
to do with
country or any other country. And any organization that would choose to make a statement, I would think wouldn't just put their initials, that they would put whatever it stands for. That seems to be not like the theme of the note, but like it's a significant aspect. But if you took it out, it wouldn't change anything.
It's very lengthy and wordy. Yeah. And if you're not worried about anyone catching you in a home writing a note, you have time to write a lengthy, wordy note.
You could write the Gettysburg Address.
Some words at the beginning are misspelled, but other harder words are correctly spelled. You can't really pin that on Patsy, but just on the fact that it's a fraudulent note, it shows the sign of deception of we're not very educated, and then you accidentally, with your own education, write harder words correctly.
The word attaché.
Crazy word.
Crazy word. Because, the problem is, one, I don't know the lingo of the 90s. Attaché would be my guess. It was more popular then.
Or someone who's very rich and would own such a thing. Have you ever used that word casually?
I've never used that word, period. That might be the first time it's ever come out of my mouth.
Really? Now, with the ransom note recontextualized, let's head back in.
Something investigators notice in the ransom note we haven't discussed yet is the phrase, quote, and hence, end quote. In the ransom note, it reads, quote, if we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier pickup of your daughter, end quote. Many have pointed out that using the phrase, and hence, is very uncommon. The thing is, this exact phrase appears in a Christmas note written by the Ramseys 1 year after the murder. Quote, had there been no birth of Christ, there would be no hope of eternal life, and hence, no hope of ever being with our loved ones again, end quote. The Ramseys would actually address this in their book, The Death of Innocence, stating, quote, actually, I have no idea why we used that phrase. Maybe we'd seen it so many times in reading the ransom note and having to write it over and over again for the police that it became part of our subconscious vocabulary. Who knows? Then again, maybe people everywhere use the phrase and hence every day of the week because it's a normal part of the English language, end quote.
So definitely not a normal part of the English language.
I'm not buying that, yeah.
I don't care how old you are.
I've used hence. I've never used and hence because it seems redundant to use and hence.
I do think the phrase and hence is kind of odd, but I also do think that's a valid explanation, in my opinion. If they really did have to write several samples of it, they've read the thing maybe dozens of times.
Yeah. It's smart in a legal sense of, yes, write a book that proclaims your innocence and explains everything. But at the same time, their legal team probably did help them with the book because the Christmas letter wasn't affiliated with the book.
Sure.
But it's like any writing after that moment should probably be looked over by your lawyer.
Those two words might be kind of difficult to catch, too. I think that would maybe slip past just about anybody's radar, unless you're specifically looking for that one phrase.
That's true.
In 2001, a district attorney named Mary Lacey would take charge of the Ramseys case. She was an avid believer of the intruder theory. She hired Detective Kolar to review the case. However, he did not believe that the evidence supported an intruder. In 2006, he would suggest to Mary Lacey that they focus on the Ramseys as possible suspects, to which Mary refused, saying, quote, "I don't want to harm my relationship with the Ramsey family," end quote.
Let the wheels of justice stop for your personal relationships as the district attorney.
No bias detected at all.
Detective Kolar would quit due to Mary's bias towards the Ramseys, believing the case wouldn't be treated objectively. Many others working on the case shared similar feelings as Kolar. In 2007, new DNA testing would be done. Even though the DNA results for the murder were said to show contamination, Mary Lucy used it to clear the Ramsey family of any suspicion, with news reports claiming the Ramseys had been exonerated. However, when pushed about the DNA evidence that made her clear them as suspects, she wouldn't allow anyone else to view it. Investigators and scientists alike would all protest, saying Mary Lacey didn't know what she was talking about and jumped the gun to publicly clear suspicion from the Ramseys. The DA who preceded Mary Lacey publicly stated that Mary Lacey's statement did not legally exonerate the Ramseys, and the case would be looked at solely upon the evidence presented.
Yes, I have evidence that exonerates them. No, you may not
No,
see
you
it.
cannot see it.
Taking everything we have laid into account, what happened that night if the Ramseys are responsible? A variation of the theory goes, when the Ramseys got home that night, JonBenet and Burke were awake. JonBenet was told to go to bed, but Burke was hungry and stayed up as his mom made him a snack of pineapple and milk. JonBenet reluctantly goes to her room and goes to sleep, only to wet the bed not long after. She then goes to her parents' room. Infuriated, John takes JonBenet to the bathroom and abuses her as a punishment, making her change her underwear. Afterwards, John orders her to go back to bed, but JonBenet doesn't listen. Instead, she goes downstairs and eats some of the pineapple. When Patsy hears something from her room before she gets ready for bed, she goes down and finds JonBenet not in her room. In a fit of rage, she hits JonBenet with the flashlight, knocking her out. Thinking she just killed JonBenet, she starts to panic. Patsy runs upstairs and tells John about what happened. Realizing that any hospital trips or autopsy would bring to light the abuse, they had to stage it as a kidnapping gone wrong. John hid the body downstairs and put the cord restraints on her, while Patsy put the duct tape on her mouth. John then starts cleaning the flashlight of any prints while Patsy gets working on the ransom note. She grabs a pen and paper and starts writing before ripping it out and throwing it away. She then starts writing again, trying to personify a would-be kidnapper, drawing in heavy influence from movies. Meanwhile, John is getting items from around the house and putting them in conspicuous places, such as the green rope in the guest bedroom and the baseball bat in the bushes. While this is going on, it is discovered that JonBenet is still alive. Realizing they are at the point of no return, Patsy goes to her art supplies and creates a makeshift choker, not being able to bear the idea of choking JonBenet themselves. Once she's dead, they run back upstairs, planning what they will say to 911. They get their story straight, that JonBenet fell asleep in the car and was immediately put to bed, and Burke was asleep the whole night. Patsy then makes the call and gives the rehearsed narrative to the dispatcher, before she is startled by Burke asking what was found, which is why Patsy thought she hung up. Patsy then hangs up and orders Burke to his room. During all this time, Patsy doesn't realize she's still in her clothes and makeup from the previous night. When Officer French arrives and goes downstairs to look for possible entry or escape points, Patsy and John freeze, realizing he could find the body. That's when family, friends, and the police force arrive. When Officer French comes back up, John waits for his moment to sneak downstairs. He goes into the room that contains JonBenet and puts a white blanket on her and turns off the light, hoping to conceal her from anyone looking. John realizes that his DNA and Patsy's will be on JonBenet, and the easiest solution to control the narrative would be if he found her. So when Detective Arndt told him to search the house, John had his opening. He immediately goes downstairs and goes to where JonBenet is. Fleet runs upstairs yelling for an ambulance, while John can do whatever he needs to before bringing JonBenet upstairs. Whether by real grief finally hitting Patsy or it being an act, she bursts into tears and throws herself onto JonBenet. Hoping to get away as quickly as possible, John arranges flights to Alabama and immediately lawyers up as a precautionary measure, this whole time forgetting that they needed to act worried and anxious for a phone call that they knew was never coming.
It's a pretty strong theory. All things considered, I dare say That might be the strongest theory.
One point of the theory is it couldn't have just been one person. Everyone at one point would have to be involved because you can't kill JonBenet and then not have the other spouse find out. I mean, obviously, it would involve a lot of luck. To be the one to find it, he had to have an opening, and the detective just happened to be like, go look for something. Pretty convenient, right?
And it would seem weird to have the parents go look for something instead of walk through it all with a police officer.
I mean, according to her, she was trying to ease their minds from the call not coming in, but at the same time, it's like, I want to follow them.
I mean, you would think, right? I mean, that just seems logical to me, but...
I'm trying to think what else, because there's a lot of other things that go into it. The fact that it's thought the paintbrush was used to assault JonBenet, which doesn't line up with this story, and also the fact that there was a shoe print found on the suitcase. And if it was staged, that shoe print was never found with any shoe belonging to the Ramseys. So where did they get that from? And the red heart that was drawn on JonBenet, didn't know how to account for that in this story. But I feel like another weak point of it is just from how fast it went from 1 to 10 in the sense of JonBenet didn't go to her room, therefore Patsy hits her in a fit of rage. I feel like there's a couple steps missing before we get to that point, right?
Right.
This conversation is good because it just brings up how things of the theory don't add up, right? It's like an overall doing the best to fit pieces where pieces probably don't fit, but to make a coherent story.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
What we've done with all the theories so far. Other than that, though, I think, as sad as it is to say, that's a pretty solid theory.
That being said, let's look at the setbacks with this theory. Any DNA evidence found on JonBenet is negated by the fact that they all lived in the same place and John Ramsey found and picked her up. The Boulder Police Department hired 6 handwriting experts, and they all concluded that Patsy probably didn't write the note. The chronic abuse symptoms from the autopsy are heavily debated and cannot be 100% confirmed. The Ramseys' legal team warned them of police tunnel vision regarding them as suspects, which explains why they wouldn't interview with the police, saying they felt the police targeted them. It also wouldn't make any sense for John to take responsibility for the broken window downstairs if they wanted to push the idea of a break-in. A break-in couldn't be 100% ruled out either, given the broken window and an open door that was found. And at the end of the day, no court or judge has ever felt there was enough evidence to warrant putting the Ramseys on trial, and in the eyes of the law, they are completely innocent. Was JonBenet a victim of disturbing predators that snuck in through a window, a creepy neighbor who had staked out the house and had a shrine of her, or the result of child abuse from her parents that took a deadly turn? Some say time and a miracle are the only solutions for the truth. We say maybe the truth will take us across state lines.
What are your overall thoughts of the case now that everything's been laid out and you hadn't heard anything before about it?
I do think that the most compelling theories, in my opinion, the shrine.
Yes.
That was wild. The schizophrenic, I mean, there were certain things about it that were just crazy. Mm-hmm. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more you can almost attribute that to, schizophrenia.
Yeah.
The point of view that the Ramseys were involved at all poses some interesting points. But like any other theory, it's one of those that you do have to bend and twist to get to fit the overall narrative.
Exactly.
I mean, overall, that's just a pretty awful thing that happened.
Just reading it, literally like so much on this case, you just hear the most general description of, oh yeah, a girl was found dead in her parents' home and there was a kidnapping, but there wasn't a kidnapping. It seems like there'd be a very definitive answer of who did what, and hearing it all, you're like, that definitely points to this and this and this. And at the end of the day, it was so sloppy, but apparently so clean because no one's ever been caught. The reason this case is not solved is probably because of the Boulder police and the insane mishandling of the crime scene. So that has to be like reason of why the case hasn't been solved. That wraps up JonBenet in Colorado. Our next episode will be in Connecticut, which we're in the summer now. We're gonna have a lot more time. I am gonna try to get an episode out in the next month or so. And now that we have more time and a producer and Terry
back from the wheelchair,
back from the dead almost. That crash was crazy.
Learn your lesson, Terry. Don't drink and drive.
Don't drink and drive, exactly. Oh, he's holding up a Jack Daniels.
Salute, brother.
Old dog can't learn new habits, right?